Hello, everybody. Welcome to the movie review for The Tomorrow War. This is the third time that I'm recording this review. Hopefully, third time is a charm. Let's see. So, um, first off, happy 4th of July. Hope everyone had a great 4th of July. I'm recording this at midnight, so hope you guys um, or had a great 4th of July. This will be published on the 5th of July, um, but we're here to talk about the Tomorrow War. The Tomorrow War had, of course, a publicly well-known bidding war between a couple of companies, and then eventually it landed with Amazon. It was supposed to come out in theaters. It has a huge budget with it, $200 million project, so it's meant to be a big summer blockbuster at the theaters, but it's not. It's going to be streaming exclusively now through Amazon Prime. And what was all the buzz about? Well, what is the movie about, first of all? Well, The Tomorrow War is about some time travelers who arrive from the year 2051 to deliver a message in the present time in saying that 30 years in the future, we are going to be facing a war against some alien creatures and we are going to lose. And we need your help to prevent this from happening. So the only hope for survival is getting some soldiers, civilians, everyone to tag team together to fight and join the fight in the future, and that's pretty much the gist of the plot. It stars Chris Pratt, stars J.K. Simmons, and it's directed by Chris McKay, whose most notable work is the Lego Batman movie, which I enjoyed. Um, so the Tomorrow War, based off the trailer, I wasn't a huge fan. By the way, if my voice sounds out a little bit off, I was just hanging out with some friends during 4th of July. Just a little, little dry, but I'll get through the review. But Tomorrow War, I wasn't huge for it. I mean, the trailer looked okay. It looked like Terminator meets Aliens. That sounds great in and of itself, but it felt more like it was being influenced by that more so than being distinct, and wasn't really digging that. So going into it, I was just like, I don't know how to feel, but I'm gonna give it a shot. The one thing that I will say that I really liked about the Tomorrow War was that some points the action seemed entertaining. And at some points there was decent buildup of tension. There were times where I felt that I was engaged in those fronts and that I was finding myself finding some footing with it. Um, but beyond that, though, the movie bears a lot of issues, and it's unfortunate for me to say, but um, the biggest one that I would say is a lot to do with logic, because it possesses the logic it possesses doesn't make a whole lot of sense. They explain earlier on, I won't spoil how, but they explain earlier on how to end the war the easy way, but they choose to do it the hard way, and in some cases the stupidest way. And within that, you're with a length of time. This is over 2 hours that feels stretched, and it feels like it's overstayed its welcome. Like, you can take out 40 minutes of this film. I'm dead serious. Like, 30 or 40 minutes of this film could have been scrapped completely, and we could have had a much more tighter film. Because the way that they maneuver the story, there comes a point where you go, we could have just done this, and then the film could have been done. And they didn't choose to do that. They decided to go for the longer route, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It just feels like we're just kind of just trying to make this movie longer for the sake of making it longer. Not longer, or no, sorry, just longer, not smarter. That type of mentality. Um, and I didn't like that at all. And speaking of time, because the movie's big marketing part of it is not just Chris Pratt, but that it's about time travel, their explanation of time is odd and at some points hypocritical. Like, they kind of go against themselves in some fashions. Like, they say that the future is already written, and we have the ability to rewrite that future, but we can't change our own fate. Like, they make that a big deal throughout the films. Like, you can't change your fate, but we can change the future in general. So our individual futures are written, but the world's future can't be changed. It just seemed really strange. And how is it that people who come from the future, who are now in the present, not affected by future events? Like, their logic of time and their explanation of time is just it just serves it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and it just feels rather like it feels like at some point the film just goes, just forget what we said. It's they're time traveling. You know, they're gonna go here and they're gonna go here. That's it. Um, so their explanation of time was just weak, and again, the explanation provided, they didn't even commit to that. They just kind of went against it, and thus became hypocritical. Um, the humor never really landed for me. I just found it just to be pretty bland, and the action at times, even though I found it to be entertaining, was largely epic and emotional, or it's trying to be largely epic and emotional, but it comes across more awkward and odd than none. And even though I think Chris Pratt is charming in certain respects, I do think that he was a little over the top in this film and honestly looked a little tired. And his character is extremely ignorant and unlikable. He acts like a toddler most times. And I just found myself kind of just like not really caring about his character all that much. But the biggest thing that I think that the Tomorrow War suffers from is the writing. It is very generic, very weak, and very cliche. And I think that's what really brings the film down, is how the film is written. There's like a certain piece of dialogue that I wrote down. Chris Pratt says at one point, "I thought we had 7 days." And then a sergeant character replies back and says, "The world doesn't end on a schedule." It just seems kind of bland and seems just kind of like whatever. But they try to make it seem kind of like oh, these are really catchy lines sort of thing. It feels like in some respects that it's trying to be like an 80s film, like an 80s action film. And it just doesn't land. It just comes across as insanely generic and highly inconsistent too. There are a lot of points where we are developing something and then it just kind of just goes nowhere. Like Chris Pratt has a certain relationship with a particular character and it feels like it just got thrown out the window in service of something else. Um, so there's many things that this film is not doing right. Like this is the perfect studio film. That's the best way to describe the Tomorrow War. It's a perfect studio film in that it has loads of action, it's loud, it's big in scope, it has a star in the front, but that's pretty much it. In terms of brains and logic, it doesn't possess a whole lot. And for the logic and brains it does have, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So, through many levels of inconsistency, weak dialogue, leading to mostly even and uneven and inexpressive performances, illogical decision making throughout, one in particular that really could have made the film much shorter and tighter, a length that overstays its welcome, and more importantly, an overall bland scope and feel, the best word to describe the Tomorrow War is fundamentally and downright generic. It had many potential to be a fun throwback to 80s action, but sadly, it just doesn't. And it really just isn't that type of film, guys. I mean, if there was a very unappealing version of itself, you're watching that. You're watching that. That is what the Tomorrow War is. It's a very unappealing version of itself.